there have been some books written that have indicated that our country is at the national level, at the emotional level nationally, is very adolescent. It's immature. It's linked to the breakdown of the family. A lot of the hyper individualistic nature of our country has ensured that we've become much more immature, because maturity, emotional maturity, is about development of what's called the limbic brain, which is the emotional brain. And if you've never had people speak into your life, correct you, give you feedback and input that you've considered, you end up pretty immature. Now, let me say this. You could be a brilliant biochemist. You can be a brilliant scientist, rocket scientist, engineer, and very immature. Because maturity is really about emotional development. It's not about intellect, right? Thus, you can know a lot of really brilliant people who are highly immature. And a healthy marriage really requires us living a healthy marriage. Now, I got married in 1984, February 25th. So send a present. Been married 37 years, just over 37 years. And because I grew up in a broken home, and my wife did, my parents, my dad and my stepmother, weren't healthy, mature adults. They're actually immature. My father, in particular, was emotionally an adolescent. He died 37 years ago at age 47 as an emotional adolescent. And so he couldn't raise us kids to be healthy, mature adults, because you can't raise your kids to be something that you're not. You see, healthy, mature people make mature decisions for their lives and their relationships. If people are continuing to make immature decisions about in their relationships in particular, it's just a sign they're still immature. They haven't grown up, because my father couldn't raise us to be mature adults because he wasn't one. So he couldn't impart into us kids when we were young, what does it mean to become a healthy, mature adult? He wasn't one. And because of that, I then went into my adult world as an immature adult, in particular, emotionally a child. In our Relate Well program, we actually talk about what is the difference between an emotional infant, what is an emotional child, what is an emotional adolescent, and what is an emotional adult. And we actually clearly delineate the differences in each of those. And we really strongly believe that if people would live a life the way God intended, that we believe, because most people in this country are emotionally adolescent, if you're a student of the culture, I'll recommend two books for you. I've mentioned them before. One is called The Death of the Grown-Up. It's written by Diana West. And here's the subtitle of the book. The subtitle of the book is How America's Arrested Development is Bringing Down Western Civilization. It's a very sobering look at how we got here and how that emotional adolescent state at the national level is playing itself out in different ways: politics, solving domestic issues, et cetera, et cetera. Mostly today, we have emotional children raising children. And again, remember, you can be a very brilliant, intellectually sound person in terms of knowledge, but very immature. All right. And the second book is by Ben Sasse, S-A-S-S-E, and he wrote a book called The Vanishing American Adult. Those two books are a really good read, but they're a snapshot of who we are individually as a nation. And so Llewellyn and I, when we got married 37 years ago, we weren't mature adults. We dealt with conflict in immature ways. Why? Because we weren't mature adults yet. And the thing is, if I didn't change who I was as a way of being, I like that phrase. It's what my mentor always used with me. If I didn't change who I was as a way of being. Now, what do I mean by as a way of being? We all have a way of being, a pattern of behaviors that's consistent over time. Why? Because that's who you are. You can say one thing and change a behavior for a short period of time. But if you don't change the behavior over time, i.e. a new pattern, you haven't changed who you are inside. And so I began to go to best practices. I got mentors in my life. I learned from different people, but I valued my transformation, becoming a healthy, mature adult. Now it takes time to get there. And I did. My wife said I have. So I'll trust that she knows, because she lives with me and experiences me regularly. And so my life was to leave being an emotional child, because that's what I was when I got married. I was emotionally a child, folks. If the Lord wouldn't hold my hand, I'd sulk and cop an attitude. I'd go sit, watch TV, threaten her, I don't care about you. You don't love me. It was childish, but it's the best I had based on the way that I was raised. And you don't know what you don't know because you lack self-awareness. One of the hallmarks of healthy, mature adults is they are self-aware. They are able in a moment to tell you what they're feeling, why they're feeling it, and why they're doing what they're doing. People who lack self-awareness are immature. You see, because the first competency you have to master for emotional intelligence, or I like the word emotional wellness, is self-awareness. We'll talk a little bit more about self-awareness in a little bit. And so I had to become self-aware. Once I became self-aware of what I was doing, then I could have self-control. You can't stop yourself from doing something if you're not aware that you are doing it. If your parents were healthy, mature adults, they couldn't raise you to be mature adults because you can't give somebody something that you didn't possess. And so my wife and I really worked hard in our early years of marriage and life, even when our kids were young, to develop ourselves to become healthy, mature adults so that we could love each other maturely, deal with conflict maturely, so that we always protected us. The idea of us is fundamental to who I am, and it's fundamental to our relate well process. And you either live for you or you live for us. There is no other option. And if you're in a relationship and you're living for you and using someone for your own personal needs, that's fine. You can do that. But let's be honest, there is no us to that. That's you using somebody for whatever reason you're using them. It's taking advantage of somebody. And sadly, that's a lot of the relationships today. They're not looking for an us. They're using each other to meet their own relational needs until it no longer satisfies me, you see, until you're no longer meeting my needs, whatever. And that's just life. I don't judge it. It is what it is. I just don't want to live that way. Grew up with that. I ain't living that way as an adult. And so a lot of the work that I've done over the years is helping people become healthy, mature adults. I like the word that they become emotionally well, emotionally healthy. Why? So they can create the healthy, mature love they're looking for in their marriage. All right. I think it's 7 or 8 points here, traits that you can develop within yourself. And if you develop these traits within yourself, then in time, you will develop emotional wellness, emotional intelligence, whichever word you want to use, it's okay with me. And then if you both learn to live by these traits as a way of being, what you'll actually find is you will have an usness that is so deep and so rich, so mature. You never want to leave those relationships. You don't ever want away from those people. My wife and I, as we went into COVID, we had a pretty strong us. All right. We've worked hard over the years, our 37 years together, to really have a strong usness marriage. Not that it's perfect, by the way. All right. It isn't. But we are an us. And as she got COVID, I got COVID, my son and my daughter-in-law got it. We all had it together. As we come out on the back end of that now, I'm just been amazed at how much deeper our usness is. I talked about that about a week ago on Facebook Live, and I actually did a live on it, and I actually talked about that today on our radio show, which will air in the Jacksonville market coming up in this coming Sunday.